Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to welcome everyone at this ISA ADB event on solar hydrogen. We are privileged to have Green Hydrogen Organization as the co-host with us, and also European Union as knowledge partners. In the face of the climate crisis and push for green energy transition, this event presents a very relevant opportunity to initiate and continue some meaningful conversations. With these remarks, I would like to invite DG ALSA, Dr. Ajay Mathur, to give opening remarks. Over to you, DG sir. So we'll wait for a few seconds for the DG to come. Good afternoon, sir. We would like to have your welcome address.
Nibla, can I start?
Yes, sir. We are waiting for you.
Okay, thanks. Nibla, first of all, a very good afternoon to everybody there. Ladies and gentlemen, I would first like to begin by extending a very warm welcome to all of you, the speakers and the participants of this event. As you know, the International Solar Alliance, or ISA, is an action-oriented collaborative platform for driving green energy transition in all our member states. And today we have about 110 member states. I'm particularly delighted to witness the collaborative approach from our partner organizations, the Asian Development Bank, to whom we are very thankful for enabling us to do this exercise, the Green Hydrogen Organization, and the European Union, who have come together on this stage to organize this event to further the cause of climate action. We note that this COP is about enabling action, implementation to action, as they say. We fully realize we are at the precipice of a climate crisis. We are well past the time for speeches, and now is the time for action. I think nowhere is this better illustrated than the fact that what is happening in these rooms, the green and the blue zones, is far more important than what is being negotiated in the negotiating rooms. The locus, the focus and the center of gravity has shifted from the negotiations to the actions. As we move ahead, I have a relatively simplistic view of how we move. We want to ensure that, number one, there is greening of our grid. Number two, as many actions as possible, energy actions, are driven by electricity rather than by fossil fuels. And as we green the electricity grid, that helps in the greening of much of the economy. Yet, there are many cases where electricity cannot, green electricity or electricity of any sort, cannot meet the needs. We need something else, and that something else is hydrogen. That's why we are all here today. We need low-cost solar power in many countries so that it plays a vital role in driving down the cost of green hydrogen production. Within the regions with vast irradiance, solar hydrogen can provide a cost-competitive, zero-carbon-based energy economy for developing countries and also for export of this green hydrogen to other parts of the world. This can be achieved by the ramping up of solar energy targets, identifying and strengthening solar hydrogen supply chains, and creating domestic demand development apart from the export opportunities. With all these objectives in mind, we at ISA have launched our program called Solar for Green Hydrogen. Together with the Asian Development Bank, which is supporting the ISA through its Knowledge and Technical Assistance Program, the ISA has developed a green hydrogen blueprint report. The objective is to assess and develop a strategy to scale up green hydrogen production and deployment, particularly in developing countries and in emerging economies. This includes identifying and creating global synergies for knowledge exchange, for infrastructure development, for assessment and facilitation of ecosystem readiness, and for the identification of ready-to-invest projects in the near to medium term. We are also collaborating with the Global Hydrogen Organization to expand solar-based hydrogen projects across countries of common operations. The areas of cooperation include establishing green hydrogen, GH2, standards and guidelines, identifying best practices in GH2 production and technology and applications, and building the capacity that is needed through training workshops and technical programs. Similarly, the ISA and the European Union are cooperating to strengthen the engagement of ISA member countries within the European Union through various areas like academia, business, financial communities, and creating networks of these communities so that we can gain from them. We are also working with the EU to facilitate the sharing and transfer of knowledge of solar energy technologies and practice. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all here today, and this is the best representation of our cooperation that we can see. I welcome you all here and thank you all for making it convenient to attend this event. Mridula, back to you.
Thank you so much, DG sir. I would now like to request Dr. Priyantha Vijay Tunga. He's Chief of Energy Sector Group, Asian Development Bank, Manila. Over to you, Dr. Priyantha.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings from Manila. It gives me immense pleasure to be a part of this event today, organized by the International Solar Alliance and the Asian Development Bank with its co-host, the Green Hydrogen Organization, and the knowledge partner, the European Union. As we all know, the conversation on climate change have become more relevant now than ever, as it should. The negative impact of climate change have become significantly more visible. Today, the world understands the potential extent of these negative impacts. To that effect, the 27th Conference of Parties presents a great opportunity for all the stakeholders in this fight against climate change to come together and develop viable solutions for climate change mitigation and adaptation. Asian Development Bank places combating climate change and its consequences at the top of its development agenda as the region's climate bank. We are focused on creating communities that are environmentally sustainable, resilient, and support sustained economic growth. One of the key aspects to creating such communities is by actively reducing the GHG emissions, decarbonizing the planet. But given the energy requirements across the spectrum and dependency on fossil fuels, emissions reduction is a challenging task. The solution lies in using clean fuel like hydrogen or green hydrogen to meet the energy demands. Green hydrogen is 100% sustainable, versatile in its applications, and more importantly, easier to store, which is one of the major issues when it comes to renewable energy, particularly intermittent renewable energy. The integration of renewable energy sources, primarily the solar energy, with hydrogen production has the potential to rapidly decrease GHG emissions, consequently realizing the net zero targets under the Paris Agreement. As you know, it is green hydrogen which can decarbonize most of the hard-to-abate sectors, particularly in the industrial sector. The argument against green hydrogen is, of course, the higher cost of production. However, the declining cost of electricity production through renewable energy sources like solar, today we are talking about solar, can help reduce the cost of production. The green hydrogen production and adoption across various sectors of an economy can be further accelerated by favorable policy and regulatory interventions by the governments. A healthy regulatory environment will allow naturally the mobilization of more investments and scaling up the green hydrogen projects. ADB realizes the importance of interlinkages between climate goals, socioeconomic development, policy, and investments. Therefore, we are very happy to support International Solar Alliance in developing its Solar for Green Hydrogen program through our own technical assistance. We hope that this program, ISA and ADB, can promote the most much needed clean energy transition in ISA and ADB member countries. Of course, there is a huge overlap between the two. Once again, I express my gratitude to be and be part of this event, and welcome all the participating very eminent line of speakers we have today. We appreciate your time and interest and look forward to a very productive discussion. Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Priyanta. I would now like to invite Ms. Walburga Hemsberger, CEO of Solar Power Europe, to give remarks.
Thank you very much. And thanks very much for this invitation. It's a great pleasure being here today. Solar Power Europe is the European association representing the solar sector along the whole value chain. We're based in Brussels. But we also have an excellent cooperation with ISA, and that's why it's a great pleasure being here today. We're cooperating in many different areas. And we're also looking into hydrogen altogether. A couple of messages from my side. So in 2020, we have been commissioning a study looking into 100% renewable world, how such a world could look like and what the costs would be of such a 100% renewables world. And it turned out that the most cost-effective way to decarbonize our economies by 2050 and hopefully earlier is by heavily electrifying and electrifying with renewables. 6% less costs, and that was pre-energy crisis, than continuing business as usual. But this study also showed that there will be an important part to play for hydrogen, for renewable hydrogen in this case. Today, almost 100% of the hydrogen which is used in fertilizers, in refineries, is gray. We all know that. It is heavily polluting gas. And this needs to be green if we want to reach our decarbonization goals. But much more hydrogen than just replacing the gray hydrogen we're using today will be needed, because we cannot decarbonize chemistry, we cannot decarbonize our steel or aviation without hydrogen. And that's where hydrogen needs to play a role, where renewable hydrogen needs to play a role. All of that will require massive growth. Just referencing the International Energy Agency, who said that in a net zero scenario, we would require some 720 gigawatt of electrolyzer capacity, 720 gigawatt of electrolyzer capacity. We're at half a gigawatt electrolyzer capacity today. So what does it need in order to get there? I think the most important point is that we need to prioritize. Now, these huge goals need to have us look at the past, but very focused and very concentrated and not being deviated by something else. So what it needs, we need to scale up renewables big times. Just to give you the equivalent of what it means to have 720 gigawatt of electrolyzer capacity, the ones which has been put forward by the IEA, we need 1 terawatt of renewable capacity. to run it, to have renewable hydrogen. So there is no renewable hydrogen without all these renewables which we have to build. And what that means is that we need to have very high renewables targets. We need to have the right infrastructure. We need to be faster. So we need to get this permitting right. We need to reduce permitting times. And we also need to have an industrial strategy for manufacturing all of that. So scale up renewables, first message. Second one, let's focus on renewable hydrogen. This is the only solution in the long term. Let's not get distracted. So we need to define for that purpose what is renewable hydrogen. This is extremely important also to give some clarity to investors, to give visibility to investors what they should invest in. So define clearly what is renewable hydrogen. And then we need to replace that fossil hydrogen that we already have today. Obviously, as I said, 100% of the hydrogen out there now is gray. We need to replace it. So we need to have binding targets to make clear what the pathway is in order to do this exercise and replace gray hydrogen. Fourth point, and I'm almost coming to an end, we need to not just replace the fossil hydrogen, but we need to replace fossils more generally. And fossils, obviously, in some areas, it is easy to replace fossils. Just thinking about homes where you can use heat pumps together with solar panels. So in the households, it's quite easy to replace fossils. But there's some industries, we call them hard to abate sectors, where it is not that easy. It's about very high heating processes, where it's not that easy to replace fossils. And there again, hydrogen comes in, but there again, renewable hydrogen has to come in. So we also need to have binding targets here too, in order to advance as fast as we can. And then last point is that at some point, not in the near future, but at some point, renewable hydrogen can also play a role in the energy system to balance the system. And we need to already work towards such a system where we then have abundant renewable hydrogen, which can play a role in balancing the energy system. So we need to already prepare the ground for hydrogen to also play a role in balancing the system. By that, I just want to end with something I read also at the International Energy Agency in one of the reports, is that we cannot get out of this crisis if we have hydrogen following the same patterns as fossils. So blue hydrogen would follow the patterns of gas, and it will not get us the independence that we urgently need. So let's again focus on renewable hydrogen in order to decarbonize our economies and to get us to that 1.5 degrees Celsius.
Thank you, Ms. Walburga, for your very impressive comments. I would now like to request Mr. Jonas Moberg on the dais, please. Jonas is CEO of Green Hydrogen Organization based in Geneva. You would like to sit here or there? That one. Sure.
Thank you, Mridula. Hi, everyone. And hi, Ajaj and Priyantha. It's amazing how Ajaj seems to move very quickly. He was sitting here just so little ago. Well, and thank you very much for your comments. You're absolutely right. Of course, we need to move very, very quickly. And we need to move very, very quickly because the climate requires it. We need to hit 100 million tons of green hydrogen by 2030 if it is going to have the impact and the contribution in the fight against climate change we think it needs to have. We have to move very quickly because the industry is moving very quickly. As Joint Secretary Bora and I just discussed, we are seeing now how the industry in India, in China, in Europe, in Africa, Australia, and not least also in the US, in part because of the Inflation Reduction Act and the tax credits that are providing there. The industry is moving. And for those of us that come from governments, from civil society, or from various organizations that enable it, there's a huge pressure on us now to make sure that we move as quickly in terms of helping make this happen fast, but also responsibly and in a way that brings benefits to our societies. It has to be a just transition. And we have, of course, unprecedented opportunities. If you think about it, this is not about resource extraction. This is not about producing green hydrogen. It's about developing and catapulting this green hydrogen economy. We're not going to just see exports of green ammonia. We're going to see ammonia being produced and at source being converted to fertilizer. We're going to see green hydrogen used at source to reduce iron ore to steel. So there are a lot of job opportunities in the locations where we're going to see this industry to happen. So what do we need to do? And now I'm again particularly looking at governments and the rest of us that are enablers. The one thing we hear, and I think this is something like the 40th panel on green hydrogen over the last week. One thing we hear a lot, the demand is there. There is not a worry amongst the large developers for customers. But that's not the same as offtake agreements. So we have to look at how do we get faster to those bankable offtake agreements that Priantha and others can help us finance and provide blended finance solutions on together with private institutional investors. Now, there is a whole range of things we need to do there. We need to work together with lawyers to share good practices from one country to another. Tomorrow we will hear about Egypt, our hosts here. They will announce 6 major green hydrogen projects of global, international, large scale. There's a lot that is unclear there, but there is also a lot that is becoming clear. We need to pool the knowledge from here with the ones that we're gaining in India, in Australia, in the US, and make sure that our lawyers and everyone learn from each other. And there are very many practical things there. We need to make sure that contracting is done transparently from the beginning. We need to make sure that we are not so focused on rushing ahead to financial closures that we forget high standards in terms of transparency in governance, high standards in terms of social requirements, in making sure, as I've said, that it is just, and high standards, of course, also on the environmental side. And we have, of course, the green hydrogen standard, which is a global standard that is currently being piloted by a number of large companies, including a couple of Indian ones. So there are many things in that space that we can do together. I've talked a little bit now about financing. We need a huge amount of financing. And most of that will need to come from private institutional investors. But a lot will also have to come from Priantha and his team. And that's why there is the roundtable, of course, of multilateral development banks, which tomorrow will launch this report. And Priantha's team has provided a page and a half of what they are doing in this space, and the World Bank has done the same. We're also from the World Bank going to hear later on, I think it's tomorrow, the World Bank President and Prime Minister Modi setting out a big, bold vision together for what they are doing in terms of helping to push this forward, help with building the capacity and that enabling environment. I think in that space, one of the particularly interesting things is going to be various forms of blended finance and concessionary lending arrangements. As I've said, most of the funding will come from the private sector, but there's going to be so much, not least country risk, sovereign risk, where I think that the Asian Development Bank and other banks like that are going to play a key role. Here in Africa, some of you have heard from the African Green Hydrogen Alliance, bringing together 6 African countries, including Egypt, supported by the African Development Bank, and learning from each other how to reach those things. And we now need in Asia and elsewhere to have similar collaborations. The last thing I would like to just raise, if I may, in this very quick comments is, we need, of course, fast and efficient planning and permitting. We're going to use a lot of land, not least on the solar and wind side. But that is only half of the equation. We need fast and efficient planning and permitting while bringing our communities along with us. Getting that balance right will be one of our generation's largest challenges. It will be one of the largest challenges in making sure that renewables displace fossil fuels with the urgency it needs. And that is why the Renewable Energy Alliance tomorrow is launching the Planning for Climate Commission. That's just one effort. We need many of those efforts working with governments and civil society, indigenous groups, all kinds of stakeholders to really make sure that we very, very quickly find international good practices, standards that people accept, that allow for fast decision-making, fast approval, and at the same time bring people along with us. Thank you.
Seated here. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite Mr. Lalit Bora now on the dais, please. Mr. Bora is Joint Secretary, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, India. And we are honored to have you, sir, amongst us. I would also like to invite Dr. Martin Keller. He's Director and President, Alliance for Sustainable Energy, National Renewable Energy Lab, USA. I would now request Mr. Bora to please give his remarks on the green hydrogen.
Thank you, ISA, ADB, the European Union and Green Hydrogen Organization for having this conversation on such a topic which is now like talk of every pavilion I have visited in the COP here. I'll start with what India is planning about the green hydrogen. As we all know that the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister Modi, has announced the green hydrogen mission, and since then the government has been working quite aggressively to bring out the document. The main purpose of the green hydrogen mission is to have a demand side creation as well as to have a supply side facilitations from the government sector. There are certain sectors where demands are already existing, like refinery, fertilizers, and there are certain sectors like steel, where there is a pressure on the industries to go for the green steel. So we have been touch with the industry to see that the demand does exist for green hydrogen. At the same time, a lot of European countries have given their requirement for the green hydrogen, and therefore the industry has a export potential. Many of the industries are already started working on those areas, and we have seen that most of the initial projects were supposed to become on the coastal side so that the exports become easy. When it comes to the supply side interventions, since it's a new technology, so government will give the viability gap funding. It may be in the form of the PLI, and we already have some successful PLIs in the form of battery storage, the solar PV modules, in which we are coming out with the another second tranche of the PLI scheme. So similar scheme may come for the electrolyzer, where one of the speaker has said that the availability of the electrolyzer is not sufficient. And we don't want to have a situation where we depend on some other place for supply of electrolyzer. So India is going to be a big hub of manufacturers for the electrolyzers. Apart from that, we are encouraging our public sector units as well as the private sector units to start with the pilot projects, so that it gives an impetus to the other industries to come and have a plant here. There are few key enablers on which we have been working, and all these things will be part of the mission documents, which is supposed to come pretty soon, in which we are going for the hydrogen hub. Like they will be mainly on the coastal side, especially on the port areas, where it will be helping the shipping industries. Then refueling facilities at a constant interval, so that it takes care of the transport industry and the supply chain creations on this area. As far as the regulations and standards are concerned, we have made a committees at the high level which are in touch with the industry as well as most of the European countries and the US. And we want that our standards are as compatible as those standards, so that our industries does not face problem in the export. R&D support, it has also been part of the mission, where the government will support the R&D, because it's a new technology area. All the big institutes, IITs, IIScs are being part of this, and they will be supported by the government, so that whatever the technological inputs are there is being given to the industry. Along with that, we are in touch with various countries like European Unions, Germany, Japan, US, UAE, where we are signing the bilateral agreements to see that we have a smooth transfer of technology and trading with them. Apart from that, when it comes to the policy interventions, so the government has already permitted the transmission and the open access facilities which we have provided in case of the solar. We all know that the solar in India as of now is about 62 gigawatt, and another 70 gigawatts of the solar projects are in the pipeline. We have a target of 300 gigawatt as a part of mission 500 gigawatt by 2030. And if we include the demand for the green hydrogen, so 1 MMT of green hydrogen needs the 25 gigawatt. So we will have another demand of 125 gigawatt if we want to produce 5 MMT by 2030. And to support that solar industry, we have come out with the PLI scheme. PLI scheme 1 is already on the board, and PLI scheme 2 will create a capacity where India is able to fulfill not only its own solar demand, but can our industry can export the solar panels to the other countries. Model standard bidding guidelines have already been prepared by the ministry, and they are in same pattern as was there in the solar industry. And the solar revolution in India was mainly driven by the private sector, and we expect that the hydrogen revolution will also be driven by the private sector. Rules and regulation, as I already told, a high-level committee under the Secretary MNRE with industry leaders and R&D of persons are working on it, and soon it will be out, and they will be as per the international standards. We have been engaging with various organizations to see that the organization includes our state governments, and few state governments have already come out with their own hydrogen policies, and other states are waiting for the center to announce the green hydrogen mission, And once our documents are there out, the other states will also come out. So land acquisition part will also be taken to a large extent in that. With this, I will just say that if we have to go for a net zero, that is the target of India by 2070, and we have our industries, which like India is working on a 3-pillar, where what we are doing is we are trying to convert all our energy demands into the electricity demand. As of now, my electricity is just 17 to 18% of the energy demand. And our plan is to convert my energy demand into electricity demand and then convert that electricity into the renewable. And to do that, the hydrogen is going to be a major factor. So with that, I thank you everyone for inviting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bora. I would like to request all the panelists to please be seated because we are going to launch the report. Before that, I would request Dr. Martin Keller, Director and President, Alliance for Sustainable Energy, NREL, to give feature presentation on green hydrogen.
So as a scientist, I have to have a couple of slides. So basically, I think I'm not agreeing with all of us said there, but also as a scientist, I have to tell you, hydrogen, there's still a lot of work we have to do. So we have to continue the innovation to really decrease the cost. I want to show you in the next slide that about NREL, we're working across, can they go to the next slide? So, yeah, so we're working across the whole portfolio from renewable power and solar, wind and water, sustainable transportation from bioenergy, vehicle technology, hydrogen, to energy efficiency and energy systems integration. And this is, I tell you, where we have to do a lot of work on the hydrogen side. How do we integrate all this together? How do we link our electrolyzers to kind of intermittent power coming from wind and solar? So there's a lot of work what we have to do. Next slide, please, shows you how also our facilities are dedicated really to scale technology up to the next level. When you compare this in solar, it took us about 30 years to go from the ideas to now having solar as the cheapest way for producing electricity. We don't have 30 years, we only have about 10. How can we really speed up the innovations to scale up these new technologies and with this bring it into the marketplace? That's what we're trying to do here at NREL. So the next slide, please, shows you now how we having this big vision in hydrogen. You probably have seen this in the United States, what we call hydrogen at scale. You can see that hydrogen will be used in many different applications, from transportation to synthetic fuels, to upcycling of oil and biomass, to ammonia, fertilizer, metal production, chemicals, and also other areas. So this is what makes it so interesting right now, that we suddenly see hydrogen as a platform molecule to be used in many different areas. But of course, we have to make sure that we're also doing this with energy justice in mind. This transition on the world have to be done in an energy justice way that everybody can participate in this transition. So the next slide, please. So what we're trying to do at NREL is that we're really working across the whole portfolio from make, move, store, and use. So in make, so what is the R&D on advanced production technologies? In move, infrastructure research on large-scale demonstration and deployment. In storage, hydrogen storage, materials and systems research, and of course in use, not only for transportation, but for many other applications from green steel to ammonia. So how can we use this wonderful platform molecules for all these different areas? But this will require research and innovations across all these different steps. Next slide, please. The key is also, for example, when we talk about electrolyzers, and you have heard in the earlier presentations that we have to scale this technology from still very small to a lot of electrolyzers. So we also there need innovations on what we call from new powder to power. So how do you create new catalysts? How do you develop new membranes? How do you integrate all this together? And again, how at the same time do you then scale up manufacturing that you're producing this at the scale what we need to do there? The key also, again, what we need to look into this is because some of the current technology, for example, would require so much of precious metal, which we don't even have on our planet. So this means that we need to find new catalysts with less precious metals new membranes, and then again, working on this, how we're scaling this in a very, very quick time period. So the next slide, please. You probably all seen this, what's happening in the United States, which is, as a researcher, very excited. You know, when DOE launched this hydrogen shot, they were trying to go for $1 in 1 kilogram in 1 decade. So this 1-1-10 goal, which I think is achievable, but it will require collaboration with scientists across all the world to really work on these very ambitious goals to reach this 1-1-1 goal. So when you go, for example, from solar to hydrogen, there's a work in photovoltaic chemical water splitting. There's solar thermochemical water splitting. And again, what we said on renewable cell electrolysis, how do we scale this? How do we increase the kind of work on this one and decrease cost? And with this, go to the next slide. I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Martin Keller, for your very impressive review of the technologies across the supply chain. I would now like to request the panelists to please help us launch the Green Hydrogen Blueprint consultation draft. Philip, would you please be on the dais as well? Yeah, for this. I mean, this is for the launch, so you need to.
Thank you, Rita.
Thank you, the panelists. We are honored to have it launched through you. The next panel discussion, our moderator is Dr. Philip Malbranche, Assistant Director General, ISA, and we will have the panelists introduced through him.
Thank you, Ridwan. So our next session is about solar hydrogen, learning from the first movers. Indeed, some realization were already made, I would say 10 years or even 20 years ago, with small system, small reversible fuel cells, but that was in the range of hundreds of watts or less than kilowatt. Since then, experience has been increasing, cost, as usual, I would say in PV, have been decreasing, and now we have available for some residential, domestic or commercial activity, we have a system in the range of kilowatt or dozens of kilowatts. And at a larger scale, we have now installation in the range of hundreds of kilowatts until the megawatt. We have demonstrator in the range of megawatt. What is really new is that now we are seeing on the horizon installation in the range of gigawatts and even dozens of gigawatts. So this is really a game changer. It's previously, when it was made using hydrogen, it was for over consideration that the cost. But now what allows us to address such big market is that hydrogen may be seen as a commodity being cheaper than fossil fuel. It's going to be the next fuel, the next oil, but cheaper. So it's really a game changer. I will not be too long as an introduction. So we will have the opportunity to review this portfolio of options. We will focus, of course, on the highest size, on the largest size, not addressing the kilowatt range, but going into the megawatt to the gigawatt range. So with that, I will I will introduce our panelists. Thierry Leperc is planned to be online. I don't know if he will be online. We have Mathieu Geze from HDF Energy, also planned to be online. Yes, I see him.
Here. Hello, everyone.
Yes. And I will also invite our two next panelists, Ms. Maria Paz de la Cruz from H2 Chile or Hydrogen Chile, and Mr. Esham Nas from Scatec. So if you can come on the stage. And with that, let me check. No, so Thierry Leperc is not available. So Mathieu, if you can start with what you have been doing, explaining how hydrogen is interesting for your applications. So Mathieu, the floor is yours for 4 minutes, I would say, and then we will have opportunity for questions. So Mathieu, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Philippe, for the introduction. Thank you also for ISA, and the ADB for the invitation. We are very glad to share our experience. I will go straight to the point. We have a few minutes available, but as a quick introduction before showing the slides, I would like to make a quick comment. So we have been mentioning that hydrogen is the new oil, and that is wonderful. We can replace oil and gas with hydrogen, with green hydrogen. However, the gigawatt scale won't happen in one day. And we need to see how we can make hydrogen projects viable and sustainable in middle-income countries. And this is what we try to do at HDF by focusing on projects where we use hydrogen as a storage solution. So to make a green hydrogen project bankable, we don't need to sell the green hydrogen molecule, but we need to sell kilowatt hour. So if we have a bankable PPA, we do have a bankable green hydrogen projects, and hence we can bring an experience, a reference to middle-income countries, while Europe, Australia are focusing on the molecules angle, which is great to make gigawatt scale, but may require sometimes a lot of subsidies, a lot of infrastructure development, and I'm not sure that most of the countries can afford that. So I will explain in a couple of slides how we do promote hydrogen as a storage solution, and I will be super short. So I hope you can see my screen. Yes. So we can see that today renewable energies became a commodity, super cheap, easy to deploy. However, it's intermittent and not dispatchable, and some grids may struggle to integrate a large amount of renewable energies. We see that in France on the island grids. We can see that also in Eastern Indonesia, some areas of Philippines, Japan, Spain. And we believe hydrogen can be a solution to deliver to the grid something non-intermittent. And this is what we do with this kind of projects where it's 100% logistic free. So we will produce the hydrogen on site, we will store it on site, and by oversizing the renewable energy plants, we will deliver to the grid day and night a stable power. And in addition to put that in the PowerPoint, we will commit in the PPA that it will be non-intermittent. So it means if we don't meet our commitments, at the end of the year, we will give fees to the off-taker. And that's how we can make them comfortable by sharing a real commitment on the stability of the system. And that helps to make real projects in terms of megawatt of electrolyzers, fuel cell in many countries. So it's not gigawatt scale per project, but it can happen. It depends of the context. but at least this is a real reference which can be materialized in the next couple of years. As an example, we have this project under construction in French Guyana. So this is France, but in Latin America. We made financial close last year. It's financed by commercial banks like SMBC and BNP Paribas. And this is a way to say that green hydrogen projects can be bankable, can be duplicated in many countries. This project can demonstrate that with the role played by the commercial banks. And we are duplicating those projects in many countries in Asia. I will give the example of Indonesia, where we have a pipeline of more than 20 projects under development, supported by DFC, while other institutions are focusing on our projects in Sumba. So basically in Indonesia, we can make 22 times what we are doing in French Guyana. Indonesia is the perfect example of island grids. We can mention also Philippines, where we have a cooperation agreement with some authorities from Mindanao. There is the electric cooperative involved, but also the provincial government, some municipalities. In Mindanao also, we are duplicating what we are doing in French Guyana. Commercial banks are supportive. Indeed, the development banks also, like ADB, and they have a critical role to play in order to bring comforts to the local institutions and sometimes to bring some leverages when possible. And as a conclusion, because we have a little time, I want to show you the countries where we are present. For Japan and India, it's a different color because we are under recruitment, but in January, the local offices will be open. And this is a way to say that we are making green hydrogen projects happen today in those countries. We don't need to wait for hydrogen to be at $2 per kilo. When we target the right context on the grids, we can make the green hydrogen viable from now. So thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate. Thanks.
Thank you, Matthew. Without further ado, I will give the floor to Maria Paz de la Cruz for you to present.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm really glad to be here. And just to tell you a little bit more about H2 Chile. H2 Chile is a trade association that we convene the whole companies and professionals that are involved in the green hydrogen in Chile. We are more than 130 members, and we have suffered a really exponential growth in the last couple of years, I think. I would like to tell you also a little bit about the Chilean ecosystem to develop hydrogen. And we have currently more or less 40 projects with different applications, domestic application, and also some projects for export. We have extremely good condition in the north, in the desert, where we found one of the best solar radiation in the world. And the majority of the projects over there are for both to supply local demand, mainly from the mining industry, and to export. In the south, we have found a really good wind conditions in the Patagonia, with some capacity factor above 60%. So the majority of the projects over there are, of course, from wind projects, and I think about to export. There's some projects that are more developed. There is a specific one that is starting operation next year and is going to export some e-fuels to Germany. And others are expected to be in operation by 2025, December 2025. The majority of them have received a public fund
$50 million funds was delivered by the government some time ago. So with that money, the government is supporting the deployment of 6 projects that are more or less equivalent to 400 megawatts. The condition is that it need to be in operation in 2025. And also the project has to be at least the 50% of their production secured by contract or some type of agreement, which is very important as well. The good news is the one that we had last Friday. The government has signed some protocolar act to get a loan for $750 million to support the deployment of green hydrogen project in Chile. That the money will be provided by the World Bank and by the IDB. I think it's around $350 million will be delivered next year. So that is very good news for all, I think, project developers as well. That money will be delivered by the government to concessional loans or maybe through guarantees. But the experience that we had previously is that we have a leverage of more or less 20 times. So just multiply $750 million by 20 times. So the most developed projects are in the 2 funds, I say in consortiums between I say renewable energy providers and technology providers, and also some renewable energy providers and off-takers as well. And other projects are taking the rest, or the project developers are taking the rest by themselves. The key factor, as said, to develop projects, at least in Chile, the off-take agreement, of course, legal certainty in 2 aspects, the technical regulation and also permitting. I think we have heard that word many times at least during this conference. And one of something that is becoming very, very important is the social acceptance to operate projects and to build and to operate projects. And that is key, you know. And of course, as I mentioned before, to have some early financing. So that's why we are really happy with the commitment of the government to get that money. Okay. What is important to us, or us, as I think we are suffering the thing that is all the same around the world, a lot of uncertainties. So I think the only way to move forward the project is to have a public and private partnership. Nobody has this silver bullet. This is something, it's a market that we are creating. So we need to take the risk all together. We can make mistake, of course, we can make mistake, but if we are together, I think we will not fall too hard. In Chile, we are really conscious of that, and that's why we are really encouraging, or at least for our members, early participation of community in the project. We really believe that renewable hydrogen has to be produced in a very, very democratic way. Otherwise, it won't be sustainable. Okay. Regarding the benefit, of course, the installation of hydrogen projects, at least in the north and also in some areas in the south of Chile, will bring the benefit to have more access to water. There are some water scarcity problem in the region, in the country. I think most of the region have actually. So that will be an extra benefit, but it comes from the deployment of the hydrogen industry, and that is a part of course of the GDP and potential new chain of suppliers, especially local suppliers. So we are in constantly conversation with the regional government in order to also to be very aware of the new opportunities that green hydrogen industry is giving us. And the other big opportunity, at least for Chile, I think, is that because we have extremely good renewable energy potential, some studies fixed between 70 and 80 times the current green capacity that we have as potential. So I think we can position Chile like a country to have a green platform to produce new green products. So that is something that we are promoting as association, and I think we have a very good welcome by the government. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you for covering the Chilean situation. I'm sorry, we have no time for questions. We will pull them at the end. So I hand over immediately to Mr. Resham Nas from Scatec.
Yeah, hello everyone. This is Hisham Nasr and I'm representing here Scatec, the Power2X team. Scatec is a front runner in renewable energy solutions. We have been working in different areas, solar, wind, and hydro. And at the moment, we're focusing on Power2X projects in countries, like mostly in emerging countries like Egypt, India, Morocco, South Africa, and Oman. Mostly, like we have really progressed in Oman project, and we have our partner Acme there in Oman. Also in Egypt, we have two ongoing projects happening at the moment. One which we have signed the first phase, testing and commissioning phase like last week with the President of Egypt and the Prime Minister of Norway for the inauguration of this first phase. It's mostly producing green hydrogen, and the green hydrogen will be mixed into a fertilizer plant along with gray hydrogen. So the end product will be a mix between gray ammonia and green ammonia, which will be exported to Europe. This project is mainly targeting to have 100 megawatt electrolyzer and a total of 90,000 tons of green ammonia, which will happen in 3 years from now on. Also, the other project will be totally happening at the moment. Also, it will take 4 to 5 years. It's mostly green ammonia only, and it's like targeting to have 1 million ton of green ammonia in 4 years or 5 years. There are also a lot of ongoing MOUs that we have been signing in Morocco and other countries, but the most like later stages project, which is the one happening in Egypt, mostly like the challenges or like the benefits, which were like, let me first mention the benefits about Egypt that made Norway as a government and also Scatec as a company to believe in Egypt to have this project here, is mostly about land grabbing activities. It was somehow easier than other countries to land grab for renewable energy, for the wind and solar to power the project. Also, the project itself, it's the plant for the hydrogen. It's near the port. It's in a place called Ain Sokhna near Suez Canal port. So it's easier to transport the end product directly to Europe through the Suez Canal area. So that's why we believed in Egypt as a country, and also to have two projects, not only one. Challenges is mostly related to, as Maria was saying, Egypt is also will be facing the water scarcity problem. So there is a law that we cannot use any fresh water for the electrolyzer. So mostly we'll be having a desalination plant to use water from the Red Sea. This also adds a lot of cost to the project, but anyhow, like we need to use that as a fact. So mostly we'll be using as a desalination plant. The other problem will be like the recycling or the output of this desalination plant about the salt. So we need to get used out of this salt because it will be a lot of salt coming out. We cannot just pump it out into the sea. So environmental aspect plays a big role in that. So we are studying that at the moment about the usages of the output of the salt. Also, other challenge related to the framework and legal stuff in Egypt. It's still a new field in Egypt. So not many entities are aware about hydrogen or green ammonia. So framework agreements and legal stuff and policies, they are still in the making. Also, like Egypt will be announcing the green hydrogen strategy along with EBRD. This will happen tomorrow, hopefully in the Egyptian pavilion. So we are also waiting for that to see how that will look like, because the government was aiming to provide incentives for companies working on green hydrogen or green ammonia in Egypt. So we're expecting to see what kind of incentives will be the government will be supporting with. Also, lastly, yeah, from the perspective or certification and having like a green certificate or like you have a label of having a green product, that's also a challenging aspect, because there are many bodies and certification bodies, and each certification body has its own criteria. Will the shipment will be like shipment of green hydrogen along the sea will be considered, because maybe you have a green hydrogen and then you transport it through a vessel that uses oil or diesel or whatsoever. Will the emissions coming out will be considered? Is it only producing like at the end of the plant and then the shipment is not considered? Also, like like some people are considering the value chain itself of producing the solar panels and the equipment used in the plant itself. So this is also a very challenging part. But as a Scatic, we are a risk taker. So anyhow, we are continuing with having the project, and so hopefully this will be handled as all of these challenges will be handled through the way or through having the project. And also also we are entering the new phase this year, and hopefully we'll sign a framework agreement also with the government tomorrow about the second project, which is a green ammonia project. Yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you. We are running a little bit out of time, but I would like to ask you a very simple question about cost. And we had, normally we should have had Thierry Leperc from Ideal España, claiming that, and that was confirmed by a study, that hydrogen would be below €2 or $2 per kg in the coming years. So I would like to have your reply from your Chilean experience. Are you addressing wind and solar plants, or do you have example with solar only, and what gives the cheapest price in Chile? And for you, if you can give me some details about the cost expected for hydrogen or ammonia.
Well, we have the national hydrogen strategy that we are, targeting at lower than $1.5 per kilograms, yeah, and $1.5 per kilograms, and that came from also from the north, from solar, and the most competitive price it can come from wind for in the Patagonia. So that is the number that we got, and that's the number that we are targeting. We have a lot of challenges probably to get it, of course, but at least by 2030, that is what the national hydrogen strategy says.
Yeah, for me, like at the moment, green ammonia can be really competitive, like compared to the world, what we have now because of natural gas prices. So at the moment, like the target is between 600 to 800, and which gray ammonia is at 1,000 something, 1,300. So green ammonia is really competitive now. But when the market will stable, hopefully, and the war will stop, so mostly we need to be around 500, 600, which is anyhow, like, I mean, in Egypt, it's like the gray ammonia is 300 to 400, the gray ammonia. So green should be between 500 to 600 to be competitive on this market.
Thank you. Mathieu, would you like to say a few words regarding this cost constraints, cost issue at your size of project?
Alors, on our side, we do believe that hydrogen will be commodity and will be the new oil. It's just a question of time. Also, when we drop numbers like this, it can be counterproductive. I'm not sure that every country worldwide can produce hydrogen at $1.5 per kilo. Then what is the cost of transportation? What is the cost of deploying the infrastructure? So we control all those questions by implementing projects locally, as I mentioned, and the scale is not a problem on our side. We will do smaller scales, like from, I would say, 5, 10 megawatts up to a few hundreds of megawatts of electrolyzer. And we believe that the key of the project is the bankability, the business model. What business model you implement? How could you finance your infrastructure? And we can make that happen now when we address areas with challenges with intermittent power.
Thank you, Mathieu, and thank you all. I'm going to close this session and hand over to Mridula or directly to Ines. Yeah. So Mridula.
Thank you, Philippe, for the session, and thank you, panelists. With your permission, ladies and gentlemen, I'll take, since we're running behind time, I'll take just 2 or 3 minutes to give you the highlight of the ISA ADB green hydrogen blueprint consultation draft. The draft is going to be on our website in a day or two. And then the whole idea is to start doing country level consultations and refine our framework that is covered in this draft. To basically, this draft is to assess the ecosystem readiness of the green hydrogen, specifically solar hydrogen, in the ISA member countries, but it is applicable to across any country in the world. The next slide, please. Yeah, this is just to give you an idea about the program 9, which is Solar for Green Hydrogen. This is the latest program that was launched last year in the Assembly. And the program objective is to accelerate solar hydrogen production and utilization in the ISA member countries. And the role of ISA is basically to assess and facilitate solar hydrogen readiness level in member countries. And the next slide, please. This is just the summary of the scope of the report, where we have the global hydrogen assessment, supply and demand. Then we have the global H2 hydrogen policy assessment in different countries, challenges and risks associated with the green hydrogen, solar hydrogen to be in specific, and then green hydrogen funding mechanisms out there and the proposed ones. Then we have a chapter on how we prepare the framework for assessment of the ecosystem readiness of the member countries to absorb or develop green hydrogen. And then we have a scoring pattern approach, and then we come up with recommendations. You'll see this report on our website very soon, in a day or two. And that was what was launched today. The next slide, please. This is just the global hydrogen demand by sector. As you can see, the top right, the 2050 projection. This is the very conservative assessment, 287 million tons. Go to the next slide, please. This is the green hydrogen demand, where it's coming from. As you see, it's energy storage, medium and power sector, feedstock and conventional industries, fuel and transportation sector in some segments, and then fuel in remote communities. Hydrogen may be the only clean solution available for hard to abate sectors. Next slide, please. This is the mapping that we've done across all continents, indicating that green hydrogen will be a globally traded commodity. And then, as you see, there are different regions. We have marked which regions have potential to be emerging export hubs, which are high demand countries, which will be importing a lot of green hydrogen. So that all mapping is done in one of the chapters. Next slide, please. Maybe we can go to the next slide. Yeah, this is just to show one graph that we got from Macro Trends, plotting how the natural gas price impacts the hydrogen. So if you see this 1950 till 2020, different geopolitics or uncertainty related to supply and chain, supply and demand of the natural gas impacted the hydrogen costs. But this advantage with the green hydrogen is that that doesn't get impacted like this. So go to the next one. Yeah, you can see this is the graph from 8 February to 6 March, and in between you had the Russia invasion of Ukraine, and you can see how the cost, the price of the natural gas has gone up, whereas the green line is the Iberian Peninsula price of the green hydrogen, which didn't get impacted across this region. Next slide, please. The cost of electricity and electrolyzers are key factors, as we know, in the green hydrogen cost. And this is just an example that on the left side, if you keep the electricity price at 40 per megawatt hour and change the capex of the electrolyzer, which are stacked on the right, and you can see the difference in capex of the electrolyzer does not have a significant impact on cost competitiveness when utilization is high. If you see the x-axis, it has the utilization of the electrolyzer. Whereas on the right side, if you see that keeping the capex of the electrolyzer constant at 450 and varying the electricity from 100 to 0 for amortized plants, then the cost competitiveness diverges with higher utilization of the electrolyzer due to difference in electricity prices. As we all know, the government leadership and decision-making is critical in green hydrogen project development. So this is just a green hydrogen production development plan that we conceptualized, and it's there in one of the chapters. The multilateral agencies like ISA, ADB, and other multilateral banks can assist in project development through technical assistance and knowledge sharing. The next one, please. Maybe the next one. This is just a summary of the framework that it's the first cut framework, and we will be refining this after consultation with the member countries. So we chose around 8 or 9 factors or screening parameters and did the assessment of member countries based on the performance or the targets they have announced. And with this all the details are there in the report. We categorize the countries, select countries in 4 different categories: frontrunners, progressives, prospectives, and potentials. Go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so these are the categories. Now, as I said, we will be doing consultation with the member countries to further validate and refine this approach. So some of the countries that you see there, in your opinion, they should not be there, but we had to start from somewhere, and using the screening parameters and methodology, we have categorized the countries in these 4 buckets. And as you can see, the 3 critical levers for increased green hydrogen adoption are creating demand, developing infrastructure, and strengthen cost competitiveness. So based on these, the next slide, please. The next one. Yeah, stay here. Yeah, just go back. Yeah, so this is what our next plan is: stakeholder discussion. We'll be having a workshop to discuss our approach and further refine it. Deep dive country level consultations to assess readiness level and assess viability of current global solar hydrogen sector in member countries. So this is just a summary of the report. And as I said, we'll be going to individual stakeholder, a group of stakeholders, to refine and go through our approach and further validate it. Thank you so much for your time. Just one last slide. I wanted to just leave with that thought that, electrolysis of water produces 8 units of oxygen and for each unit of hydrogen. So we have to kind of take that also into consideration to create this advantage that we have for electrolysis. With this, I end the remarks here and then give the mic to my colleague of European Union, Dr. Sundar, and he will take few minutes to cover the ISA EU green hydrogen case studies that he has done. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mridula. I hope you can hear me. And I'd like to take the cue from Mridula and try to make this presentation as quickly as I can. The panelists from the inaugural session had already set the tone and called for sharing of experiences from projects that were already implemented. And this presentation is a modest attempt at doing just that. And fortunately for me, Mr. Matthew from HTF had already spoken about the bankability and the contractual structures of the project implemented in French Guiana. So to that extent, it reduces the time that I would consume. The first project that I would speak of is the green hydrogen project in Spain, which at the time was the largest green hydrogen project in Europe, where the solar PV plant helped produce hydrogen. But the key aspect of this project was the availability of the off-taker in the vicinity. The proximity of the off-taker reduces the risk faced by the investors. And the fact that it was applied for a single purpose brought economies of scale for project implementation. I would also like to highlight the present situation in Europe and the urgency to try and make the most of existing infrastructure. And this case that I speak of is a project where an existing natural gas well was sunk into a new cavern so that there was enough storage for green hydrogen. Taking it further, this is a project from Utah where a hydrogen-capable gas turbine power plant would then use the stored hydrogen from the underground facility to generate electricity and to meet demand. This is a project that Matthew already spoke of, and as he had highlighted, the supply was optimized, the power plant and the storage was optimized, but above all, it brought out the importance of bankability of the project and the specialized skills required in financing a clean energy hydrogen project. This project is a pilot, again, highlighting the use of existing infrastructure in France, where natural gas was blended with green hydrogen, starting with 6%, going all the way to 20% to check on the possibility of transporting green hydrogen within existing pipelines. And this mix of hydrogen and methane was supplied to houses for cooking and heating and for transportation at the local bus depot. Above all, the lessons that we have learned from some of these pilot projects is that the regulatory structures are yet to be completely designed. And we see that regulators have been gaining experience from these pilots as well. Many of the aspects of the project need to come together in time for a successful project to be launched. And above all, the financing needs to keep pace with the cash flows that are likely to be generated by the implementing project. And making a project more bankable includes creating the customer commitment to reduce the off-taker risk and to ensure timely payments for the hydrogen delivery. And so towards this end, the Hydrogen Valley partnership has been launched, where many of these stakeholders are brought together on one platform. We have banks, we have technical experts and the others who are in a position to define the risks faced by the various projects and to identify risk mitigation measures. And so this is where I would like to stop and say that this is a modest attempt to pursue the path which was suggested by one of the panelists in the inaugural session, where he had mentioned that there was a need to learn from the experiences of various pilot projects implemented across countries. I would like to hand it back to you, Dr. Mridula. Please take it over from here.
Thank you, Dr. Sundar. I would now like to request Dr. Ines from Green Hydrogen Organization to come on the stage for the moderation of the second session, please.
Okay, we're running a bit out of time. We've had a fantastic lineup of speakers. We will try to make this. We will not be able to give justice to the speakers that that are speaking in the next session. We are just trying to see what's feasible. Okay, we will have a fireside super quick chat. Okay, welcome our panelists to the stage. Anna Schibsberg, Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Bureau of Energy Resources, U.S. Department of State. Eric Soto, who's the President of Aqua Energy and founder of the Aqua Foundation. And we have Mr. Derek Shaw, who's the Senior Vice President of L&T. Fantastic. And we have Sam Bartlett from the Green Hydrogen Organization. So we'll make this quick and extra exciting. Anna, please tell us, US. We have been hearing about IRA in pretty much every panel we've been to. Can you just give us a brief window into the US regulatory developments and how they will affect the green hydrogen market, please?
Sure, and I know we're very excited about the Inflation Reduction Act, probably as much as anyone else. I'll say, I don't know if anyone noticed, but about 2 months ago, the Department of Energy released our hydrogen strategy and roadmap. And in that, we have the 3 priorities that we're going to move by. So that is high impact sectors, industry, long duration storage, heavy duty transport. And then also we're going to focus on cost. Martin was here from NREL talking about how do we actually get down to $1 per kilogram by 2030. So that is a big component. And the third one is regional hubs. So thinking about co-location, thinking about pooling demand, really what Jonas was saying about you need a revenue model and we need pilots that actually move toward a feasible revenue model. Before the IRA, we also had the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. That's $9.5 billion that went out for these goals. $8 billion of that for regional hubs, $1 billion for cost reduction, $500 million for manufacturing and recycling. By the time the Inflation Reduction Act was coming out, it was focusing on the incentives that you need for renewables, the PTC, the ITC, and also the incentives now for hydrogen that are very emission focused. If you look at the IRA, it's very much looking at how many kilograms of CO2 do you cut? So it's looking at the final goal. And there's a lot of excitement around that. In terms of, we're here really talking about the global economy, and I focus on international energy policy. So a lot of the questions that we're getting is for other countries that are starting up R&D or not involved in R&D. How do we take advantage of this? What does this mean for us? And so we're really trying to work with them to figure out what's the regulatory framework, what is the economic viability of exports, how much does it cost to produce internally, what regulatory frameworks and incentives do you need? We're starting up a new program actually at Department of State with the government of Bhutan, particularly on this. And the other big thing, which I feel like I can't leave without talking about, is of course that we need to be across multilateral fora to talk about standards and codes and certification. Because the reality is countries have very different feelings in terms of what the definition of clean hydrogen is. Is it technology or emission based? How do you measure it across scope? Is it well to gate? Is it well to wheel? What is the tracing protocol for chain of custody? Do you have other factors that are important, such as water? As in Australia, they care about these things. So those are the kind of components that we really need to get to the table, or they're going to be trade implications that are not as beneficial. So those are the quick and dirty.
Fantastic, thank you, Anna. And it's really exciting to hear about what's happening in the US. Eric, you have extensive experience when it comes to renewable energy, but also green hydrogen. It'd be really interesting to get your reflections on what are some of the measures that are needed to make green hydrogen really happen at this point.
Thank you very much. I think a lot have been said, so I'm going to be very sharp and quick. We've been one of the first company in the renewable energy to trust about hydrogen. So in 2015, 2016, we started a project, and we were sure that hydrogen will be green in the future because it makes sense.
And as you see the situation worldwide today, it's so important to produce your own energy, to produce whatever it's needed, and mobility is part of it. And we trust at the time that everybody will follow us in the hydrogen mobility. We were very optimistic. So what we try to do is to sell to government, to sell to companies the fact that they have to switch to green hydrogen for heavy transportation. So we push a project which is called Last Mile. We got support from the European Commission, from the French government. We were very excited. But at the end of the day, nothing's happened. Why? Because the customers, they didn't want to pay the price. And the price at that time was 9, 10, 11 euro per kilo. So everybody's promising to go to 2 euro per kilo. That might work, but that's not sufficient. What's happening? We've been waiting for 20 years for the car manufacturer and the truck manufacturer to realize that future is electric. Nobody wanted to go in that direction. So they invented hybrid. Hybrid was a way for them to slow down the process. That's the most stupid thing we ever done, you know? We knew that electric cars will work. And today we are asking them to go hydrogen. Just forget about it. None of the truck manufacturer, none of them is ready to go in that direction. So that's for heavy transportation. So we sold our business last July because as a medium-sized company like us, we couldn't wait 10 more years to go to that direction. What was our purpose? Was to prove that's the best way to produce hydrogen is from renewable energy resource because there are no volatility in the price. That has been done. That's why we sold. Another heavy transportation, which is key, is boats. So if you talk to the big guys, and they are not numerous, unfortunately, in the world, transporting containers from China to Europe, or from Europe to South America, whatever. They love hydrogen. They are on TV spots, they are pushing for that, claiming they're going there. Just have a dinner with them and ask them when. And they will answer in 10 years. I'm sorry, we don't have 10 years in front of us. So, since I have someone from the US government, US administration sitting close to me, if we want to make it, it's exactly what's happening with electric car and diesel car today. We have to force, by the regulation, people to go faster in that direction. Why? Because we cannot afford to wait for 20 years for that. You know, we are talking and the Amazonia are disappearing. The people on small islands are dying. I'm not there, everywhere, you know. Climate change is here now. So let's stop to talk and let's move into the right direction by forcing, unfortunately, the industry to go faster and not to respect the wish of the oil industry, which is claiming that in 2050, everything will go well on this planet. But the people who are saying that, they don't care about it. They will be dead by then. That's the point. That's my point.
This is such a critical message, Eric. We really appreciate this, and we will do everything we can to make sure that we're moving fast enough, and really interested in hearing from you, Derek, what you think are sort of these type of measures that we can make to make sure that the industry decarbonizes, and perhaps there's some interesting insights from India here.
Yeah, I think very strong points from you, but yeah, very well, I think, articulated. Yes, we have both the extreme side and obviously the more practical side that's happening. So as much as my earlier speaker, Mr. Bora, has also spoken, you know, in our country, in India, we are taking very measured steps. Possibly, you know, we can always say that we are not as much as the developed world, but in a country which has come up so young and new, yet the kind of steps that the country is taking, both in terms of solar power, the kind of mandates that have been put, the manner in which our solar power is being incorporated in the complete power scenario in the country. In the same manner, hydrogen is also being evaluated in the manner to be mandated, not only mandated, measured, and as you rightly said, partly making an ecosystem around the whole the sphere in which the industries themselves start adopting. So there are a couple of measures that we have been taking. There are incentives being provided by the government in manufacturing, both solar cells, panels, incentives being provided in electrolyzers. There is a very strong, let's say, message that there will be an incentive also provided to produce green hydrogen in the country. And the whole ecosystem that is around, including supply chain, skilled people, availability of open access. In our country, we have this system of open access power where you can actually produce power from somewhere else and wheel it to another part. So multiple policies are being created in which power, manufacturing, land, skilled people, all this is being made available to ensure that green hydrogen is produced at the most competitive prices. And I'm very sure with all this, there may not be a need to force as much as it's being emphasized, which is very true in your way, because you've seen in the past that if it didn't happen. But I'm saying if the industry works hand in hand with the government and the government provides the right ecosystem, industry adopts these and incentivizes, we are there.
Thank you very much. And we will not be keeping our esteemed panelists for much longer, rest assured. I just want to give 1 minute to Sam Bartlett, who's the director of the Green Hydrogen Standard, to just highlight how address Anna's point around certification and standards.
Great, well, I'll do that very, very quickly. I'm speaking tomorrow at 1 o'clock about the Green Hydrogen Standard. So if you're interested, come to that session. So I'm going to use my last 40 seconds to respond to the interesting things that you've said. I think that you're absolutely right. We've got to be realistic about hydrogen. But let's remember, it's not new. We have 100 million tons of hydrogen being produced today. It's grey hydrogen. Every 1 kilo creates 11 kilos of CO2. It's one of the dirtiest industries that there is in the world today. So what do we need to do? We need to replace that grey and black hydrogen with green. The second thing I want to say is be very careful about blue hydrogen, okay? A blue hydrogen project that fails is a grey hydrogen project, and most blue hydrogen projects fail. I'm sorry, it's just the reality. Go and have a look at the science. So yes, we can be optimistic about some companies are doing some great work with carbon capture and storage, but let's be realistic about that. And then the last thing I'll say is the IRA is a game changer because it creates a scale. It's a strong incentive, and to get the biggest incentive, you have to deliver the lowest emissions. It's simple, it's smart, and it's going to accelerate hydrogen production very quickly, and that's exactly what we need. There's one other thing in the IRA that nobody talks about, and that it taxes methane emissions. And that's fantastic. That's what we need to do, because the reason that grey is cheaper than green, because we're not paying the full price for grey. So let's tax methane emissions and let's incentivize green hydrogen. And usually the cheapest way of doing that is with solar. So thank you to ISA for having us here today, and see you tomorrow.
Yeah, that was, you stole my thunder. So fantastic. Thank you so much to our panelists. Some very key and powerful messages that came out of this format. So thank you so much for your patience, and thank you, everyone.
To end the event, I would request Mr. Jeevan Acharya, Principal Energy Specialist, Asian Development Bank, to give conclusion remarks, please. Over to you, Mr. Jeevan.
Okay, thank you, Mridula. So good afternoon, good evening, depends on where you are. Ladies and gentlemen, to begin with, I would like to express my gratitude to have this opportunity to address this gathering today. It was an absolute pleasure to hear you speak and to learn about the projects reflected in your case study presentations. Your effort in combating climate crisis in your own unique ways is an encouraging sign of the growing call to fight climate change. So I would like to thank all the panel members for being here today and sharing your knowledge. An event at the highest stage, like a Conference of Parties, COP, is no small feat. I would like to thank the International Solar Alliance, ISA, for providing the platform to enable such events of extreme relevance at a crucial time as the current times when energy is at the center of climate dialogues. The ISA is displaying commendable leadership in accelerating the global clean energy transition by scaling solar energy deployments in its member countries. My sincere gratitude to our co-host, the Green Hydrogen Organization. Your initiatives in GH2 green hydrogen standards and efforts to bring relevant stakeholders to support green hydrogen production is a significant contribution to the cause of a green economy. I would also like to extend my sincere thanks to the European Union for supporting today's event as a knowledge partner. The EU is an important member of the global leadership, and your support will go a long way in creating an enabling environment for international cooperation. I thank all the participants in the audience for being here today. Lastly, my thanks are due to the team of dedicated organizers for bringing together this event. I hope this event is just a precursor to many meaningful associations in the future. Thank you so much to all of you. Thank you.
With that, we come to a conclusion of this session. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Have a very good day.